Welcome into Grimm's Case of Horror. My name is Grimm and this is your new haven for all things horror movie related, and today I'm going to be going over the movies for this week's Little Wheel of Horrors. If you don't know, Little Wheels of Horror is a new segment I'm trying where I spin a wheel and I pick 5 horror movies and I have to watch them, review them, and it's basically like a weekly wrap up of the horror movies that I've watched. So I'm going to start off with the worst movies from this week to the best. Starting off, we have a movie called Night Teeth. Night Teeth is a vampire thriller that combines elements of horror, mystery, and dark comedy within an urban, neo-lit world. The story revolves around Benny, played by Jorge Lindenberg Jr., a young college student in LA who takes up a night shift as a chauffeur for his brother Jay. Things go sideways when he picks up 2 mysterious women, Blair and Zoe, played by Debbie Ryan and Lucy Fry, who he finds out are vampires and have a plan to carry out a violent takeover of LA's vampire hierarchy. This puts them at odds with Victor, a vampire kingpin who wants to seize control over the city's human and vampire population. Night Teeth dives into the themes of loyalty, power, identity, and survival, placed within its current urban vampire world. The movie centers on loyalty as Benny finds himself caught between his loyalty to his brother Jay and his survival instincts, while the vampires are put into this power struggle where betrayal is a commonplace. The whole vampire underworld in this movie really feels similar to the bounty hunter underworld that was created in the John Wick movies and universe, with many similar references and patterns where there's just too many similarities for it to not be a ripoff almost. But the centuries-old truce between vampires and humans just symbolizes the fragile nature of alliances and trust in a world where power is the ultimate goal. Blair and Zoe's sisterly relationship is put at stake as their personal ambitions differ, hinting to conflicts that come into play when loyalty and self-defense clash together. Victor, who is played by Alfie Allen, captures the theme of power and its corrupting force with his ruthless ambition to dominate Los Angeles. As the vampire kingpin, he sees himself above any rule, seeing both humanity and fellow vampires as stepping stones for his authority. This power struggle extends further as Victor wants to break the truce and turn LA into a playground for vampires, which poses the question whether power should be used to maintain peace or for one's own dangerous ambitions. Benny, as a protagonist, is the figure of innocence and humanity among the dark world around him. His journey brings up questions of what it means to be human versus a vampire, exploring the conflicting feelings of fear and attraction towards Blair, who represents an intractable supernatural entity. Through Benny's experiences, Night Teeth places the grounded human world with the predatory existence of vampires, challenging us to question the cost of sacrificing humanity for immortality. Benny's journey also symbolizes the theme of survival as he navigates a city filled with predators, which could be a subtle critique on the LA culture and how it's easy to be taken advantage of and to become someone's stepping stone, trying to gain power within the city. His determination to make it through the night as a vulnerable and powerless person just shows the strength of human nature. On the other hand, the vampires embody a more primal instinct where their interactions are motivated by power plays and a hunger for dominance, portraying the dark side of alliances and betrayals. Jorge's portrayal of Benny brings a relatable and authentic protagonist, capturing how naive and disappointed he is towards life. He just effortlessly grounds the film alongside Debbie Ryan as Blair, who has some authentic and raw chemistry with Jorge. Debbie Ryan just shines as Blair, bringing a layered vulnerability to her vampire character. Her performance is subtle, but is able to balance her cold, predatory instincts and also bring this warm emotion towards Benny. There is this one line in the movie where Benny basically says how she's more human than she is monster or vampire, and that's kind of how they portray her in the movie. Their chemistry in this movie is what elevates the stakes, and it makes me feel the threat towards Benny and his brother Jay and Blair for that matter. Blair is the character that brings out the sympathy and angst in this movie. And then we have Lucy Fry as Zoe, who delivers an intense performance that captures her reckless, violent, and unpredictable nature, leaning into her darker tendencies that provides a chaotic energy that differs from Blair's more thoughtful nature. Her character basically represents the unchecked consequences of ambition. Night Teeth is directed by Adam Randall, who seems to mostly lean heavily into the neon-soaked aesthetic, giving LA an almost dreamlike quality, and uses the vibrant LA nightlife as a backdrop to create an elevated sense of danger, which is perfect for the movie's darker themes. The only problem with the movie and its direction is how similar just the background text feels to John Wick, making it not feel original, as the movie doesn't really do anything to comment on vampire lore or to further elaborate or make anything like original. Doesn't really do anything to make it stand out aside from other generic vampire movies. The movie also lacks any thrilling action sequences, which makes the best highlights being the Los Angeles aesthetic that is captured in the themes of power, trust, and relationship between Benny and Blair. The direction remains consistent on focusing on visuals, ambiance, and establishing the movie as a stylish thriller. But other than that, the action scenes that I believe the trailer like markets this movie as, they're just really lackluster and just really disappointing. Overall, Night Teeth might not reinvent vampire lore, but it's an aesthetically compelling exploration of themes like loyalty, power, and survival. The performances, particularly from Jorge Lindenborg Jr., Debbie Ryan, and Lucy Fry, breathe life into a world where supernatural forces are at constant odds. Randall's direction ensures that the movie's visuals and pacing maintain suspense, making it a worthy watch for fans of vampire thrillers and urban horror with a stylized modern edge. And I give Night Teeth a B-. So moving on to the second movie I watched, going up from worst to best, is Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. Now I know the Smile movies are next. I just spun the wheel. The first thing I got was Truth or Dare. It was insane to me. Blumhouse's Truth or Dare is a supernatural horror thriller that spins the classic Truth or Dare game into a deadly scenario. Directed by Jeff Wadlow and starring Lucy Hale and Tyler Posey, Truth or Dare follows a group of friends whose seemingly harmless spring break game takes a terrifying twist. After playing the game of Truth and Dare in an abandoned church in Tijuana, Mexico, they find themselves cursed by a supernatural force that forces them to keep playing. And the rules are simple. You must either answer a truth or complete a dare, and if they refuse or fail, they die. So I do want to say I actually watched this movie years ago, since it came out in 2018. I believe I watched it like I think I watched it on Redbox. Like, does anybody remember that? Redbox? That's how I used to watch all my movies instead of going to the theaters. I would just wait for it to go on Redbox, and then my family would get just movies that we wanted to watch, since it was like $1 or something. But yeah, I believe I remember watching this movie, and I really enjoyed it. And then I look on Rotten Tomatoes and it's 15%. Even audience scores are low. It's like a 4 out of 10 on Letterboxd. So I was confused about that, but after watching this movie, I can see why this movie is ranked so low. But I'm here to point out the reasons why I enjoyed it, and also how I can see why people don't like this movie as much as I did. I also just had to point out how this movie was the first to start with the smiley face entity type of persona that is now used in Smile movies. Like I said, this was like one of the first movies that came up when I spun the wheel, coincidentally. And I'm not lying when I say that. Like, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Out of all the movies, I have like over like, I don't even know how many movies I have like in this wheel that I have. But basically, I just spun it and landed on Truth or Dare. So first off, this movie, I will say, is noteworthy for its mixture of supernatural horror with the high tension of a classic party game. I feel like the way Blumhouse really succeeded, because I believe this was one of the first movies under the Blumhouse like name, and it's kind of like the same concept as like Happy Death Day. It's like where they take a concept and turn it into a horror movie, kind of like what they tried to do with like the recent movie Night Swim, but that kind of didn't work as well. But I've really enjoyed how they turned just a harmless, fun party game into a deadly and dangerous game. And the way that they use it in this movie is probably like some of the best like ways you can like take a concept and turn it into a horror movie. Just like Truth or Dare usually would, this movie explores the themes of friendship, betrayal, and the concept of fate versus free will. This movie could also be compared to other movies like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies when it comes to the themes in the story. The movie uses the game's curse as a way to expose the cracks in the friendship of the main characters, Olivia, Lucas, Marky, Penelope, Tyson, and Brad. The group seems pretty healthy and bonded, but with every turn they take in the game, more uncovered secrets and dangerous actions lead to their trust in each other fading. The game pushes them all to question how well they really know each other and whether they can depend on each other in moments of crisis, especially like this. For example, Olivia is forced to reveal her hidden feelings for Lucas, played by Tyler Posey, who is Marky's boyfriend. Marky being Olivia's best friend, which not only puts their friendship at stake, but also strains the group dynamic and like kind of divides them almost. This truth or dare curse also tests their loyalty to each other, as some of them try to outsmart and escape the game, leading to their death as the entity forces them to kill themselves, similar to Smile in that way. And this tension that's created to divide this friend group is what really creates the atmosphere that I enjoy in this movie. The same reason I find Bodies enjoyable. By exposing their secrets, the game pretty much is a mirror that brutally forces each person to confront who they are beneath their mask. This whole exploration of secrets and hidden truths is the movie's strongest psychological aspect, balancing with the horror to discuss real fears like being seen for who we truly are, losing our reputation, and facing the shame that comes with self-reflection. This movie also explores morals and survival, more specifically with Olivia's character arc, who is played by Lucy Hale, who I will say seems just basically typecasted in this movie from her iconic role as Arya from Pretty Little Liars. And it's like the themes are pretty similar too, which is kind of strange to me. But her and her friends are forced to betray each other, risk their lives, allow others to suffer, and in the end, she's forced to make a decision to broadcast her Instagram followers and ask them truth or dare, widening the player range so they won't have to take their turn as frequently, which she does to save Marky and herself, choosing themselves over millions of people, which raises the question of whether it's justifiable to harm others if it means saving yourself and your loved ones. And now that I said that out loud, they use the same thing in Pretty Little Liars in like the later seasons with like the whole board game thing. Pretty Little Liars fans will get that, but if you don't, go watch Pretty Little Liars. It's an amazing show.
Me, I'm ready to hang a sign. Bitch can see.
This theme reflects the more dark side and how survival instincts can override moral integrity. This movie also came out right around where social media was at its peak, pretty much in 2017, 2018, and with how the movie ends, it really shows the scary side of viral trends and what you can easily be roped into. Like, I remember some crazy trends like the blue whale trend, I believe, which was just a really dark and like, I won't get into all that. If you look up the blue whale trend, viewer discretion advised, I will just say that. And I feel like this movie comments on the dangerous side of social media like that. I also have to point out the three standout performances in this movie, starting with Lucy Hale as Olivia, and as someone who actually just finished Pretty Little Liars not that long ago, which I will have reviews of all the seasons up at some point. I'm working on that. But Lucy Hale just delivers a strong presence and is pretty much on the same par as her performances in Pretty Little Liars, where her character is lowered into desperation and morality with sensitivity, balancing the idealism of her character and growing common sense as she faces these life or death situations. Her subtle performance helps to anchor the movie, giving us a protagonist that we can empathize with despite her morally questionable choices. God, this really does sound like her character from Pretty Little Liars. Then we have Violet Bean as Marky, who delivers a layered performance that is both emotional and explores Marky's trauma from her dad's suicide, which turns into self-destructive tendencies and volatile emotions. Bean captures Marky's complexity, shifting between moments of vulnerability and strong independence. Her strong and emotional performances are one of the strongest highlights of the movie. We then have Tyler Posey as Lucas, and I wish he was done better justice in this movie, because his only character trait is being the love interest, trapped in a love triangle between these two best friends, and is trying to keep the peace between them, and is also trying to survive. Like, as a Libra myself, I have to say his character gives off Libra energy. That's the only like personality trait that I can give him from personal experience. I just feel like his role could have been fleshed out so much better if he was given actual personality traits. But for all the other characters, like all the other friends, they seem to be even more basic and two-dimensional. Like Brad, for example, he's basically the gay best friend who's like coming out of the closet. Like, he comes out to his conservative dad. And then you have Tyson, who is just the asshole in the group. And then you have Penelope, who is basically Tyson's girlfriend, and she basically just does whatever Tyson says and goes along with it. And this is where I get into the big downsides of this movie, which is how badly developed and written this movie truly is. The characters are constantly changing their moods, or or like their decisions are so are changing so rapid. And the movie is just so fast paced that there's no time to really develop anything between the friend group or even the story. Like they can go from like arguing and hating each other to being so like emotional to each other. The dialogue is also pretty horrific in itself, as it just seems like the movie sacrificed story development over plot progression and trying to spitfire enough truth or dare questions out to keep the level of thrill and horror. And as great as those moments were in this movie, it is what truly lowers this movie for me. But I can also see why they made this decision, as there is no pause for the characters sticking to the rules set in place from the plot and lore. Overall, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare takes a simple premise and expresses complex psychological and societal themes by using supernatural horror to expose character flaws, hidden traumas, and moral failings. The film becomes more than just a thriller. It's a dark reflection of human nature, vulnerability, and the complexities of modern friendships and personal identities. The performances in Truth or Dare bring emotional depth to a story that might have otherwise felt generic, while Jeff Rawler's direction keeps the tension high and the stakes continuously escalating. His visual choices, particularly the smiley face effect, contribute to a distinct atmosphere, making the game feel infinite and inescapable. Although some areas could benefit from greater character exploration, Wadlow's direction effectively delivers a blend of supernatural thrills and psychological tension, creating a movie that is as much about facing personal fears as it is about supernatural survival, which is why I have to give it a B-. So moving on to the next movie, we have Smile. Smile is a psychological horror movie directed by Parker Finn and centers around the themes of trauma, guilt, and the terrifying manifestation of suppressed emotions. The story follows Rose, played by Sosie Bacon, a psychiatrist who becomes the latest victim of a supernatural entity after witnessing one of her patients committing a horrifying suicide. Rose then begins experiencing visions, seeing unsettling, smiling figures everywhere, which pushes her into a downward spiral of paranoia. Smile heavily explores the themes of unresolved trauma and how it lingers and runs through your mind and emotions. Rose's own buried trauma comes to the surface as the smile curse takes hold of her. The movie uses this entity as a metaphor for emotional pain that transfers from one person to another, showing how it can be spread, inherited, and ignored, continuing the long everlasting cycle of trauma until it destroys its victims. As Rose's hallucinations get worse, she becomes isolated from her friends, family, and her fiancé Trevor. Her mental state getting worse mirrors the social stigma around mental illness, as the people around her tell her that her behavior is from stress or psychosis instead of accepting the supernatural force at play. Basically, this movie commenting on how society frequently fails to address mental health issues, further making their suffering even worse. The whole smile gimmick that is used is symbolizing how we mask our internal pain with an external expression of normalcy. And this is what I really love about these Smile movies, is how they take such a theme like trauma and like mental illness and just turn it into a psychological but also supernatural horror movie. These movies are succeeding in the way Truth or Dare should have. Throughout the movie, Rose hallucinates the people around her with the smile expression, and the entity continues to tell her that she's going to die and that her time is almost up. And this echoes how people often suppress their true emotions, kind of mocking their victim by smiling for trying to not freak out and to try and be normal. This contrast of the unsettling smile and the underlying horror adds to the disturbing tone, but my one problem with it is how cheesy it is used in this movie. This movie kind of focuses more on the horror aspects in the smile gimmick rather than the actual story, and I feel like that's what hurts this movie a lot. Rose's guilt becomes central to the movie's conclusion. The movie kind of focuses more on the horror aspects in the smile gimmick rather than the actual story, and I feel like that's what hurts this movie. Similar to how it hurt Truth or Dare, but not quite extreme. Because with Truth or Dare, they focus more on like the concept of the Truth or Dare game being turned into a horror movie. But with this, it's just they're using that same smile gimmick that was in the marketing for that movie, but with a more serious and developed story. It still just feels really cheesy, and the focus just seems way more on that than it is the actual story and the themes. But Rose's guilt becomes central to the movie's conclusion. The entity exploits her unresolved feelings of responsibility for not confronting her resurfacing trauma. The entity feeds on the psychological damage that is caused by guilt and shame, making the horror deeply personal and with And with how Smile ends, it leaves you with a sense of hopelessness, emphasizing that trauma is a force that can't easily be controlled or resolved, and mirrors how it's a cycle where it often gets passed down or projected onto others. And this is what I love about these movies, and I will talk about it further with Smile too, but how these Smile movies really dive into these underlying themes of trauma, which help make it feel more personal, terrifying, and relatable. And I just wish this movie focused more on using the actual story to express its themes more than the horror visual effects and jump scares. Sosie Bacon really surprised me with her acting performance in this movie, as it truly elevates the movie from a generic supernatural horror and blends in this emotionally driven psychological thriller, which is the best part for me, where it does feel too exaggerated and cheesy, but for the most part, she was really great. Sosie Bacon just brings this raw, grounded, emotional intensity to her role, from the opening scene where she's a caring and incompetent psychiatrist, but as she becomes haunted by the Smile entity, she effortlessly shifts into this woman who's under immense weight of her trauma. Parker Finn's direction with these movies is what really makes them enjoyable for me, as he builds such an unsettling atmosphere that defines Smile. And I don't know if you guys feel this too, but I just feel like he is starting to shape and form his own style of filmmaking, like Damien Leone, Jordan Peele, Wes Craven, John Carpenter. Like, you can feel like he has a significant touch where it's becoming just unique to his own like presence on direction and execution. And I can just tell he has a vast vision for what he wants to do with these movies. I just feel like in this movie, he just leaned too much into using the visual horror aspects to where they, like I said, felt cheesy and exaggerated. And it kind of felt like in this movie, he was kind of like testing the waters, experimenting with what he could do and create, seeing what people would like and what they would accept and what he could create as a director, to see how people would respond. And it really did work in his favor, as you can definitely tell the talent that he has and the creative genius that he is. It's not just the tense atmosphere that he creates, but also his use of visual set pieces like in the background, or using distorted visuals, wide angle shots to show Rose's growing isolation, and framing her in large empty spaces like her house or a room to point out how alone she truly is when going through this, dealing with not just these hallucinations in the entity, but also with her resurfacing trauma. One thing I've also noticed is Finn's use of disturbing audio, which truly elevates the tension, especially for the few jump scares that are used, because there are a few jump scares in these movies, in this one and in the second one, where just the audio that he chooses and like the placements, the way that it's executed and just delivers just this like chilling and like unsettling feeling, like it's truly unmatched. I honestly think Finn's blend of supernatural elements and psychological trauma is truly what makes Smile stand out from generic horror, and his way of directing also had me constantly asking myself whether Rose was being haunted or if she was actually losing her mind, and if we were basically just seeing what Rose was like hallucinating. It just created this blurred line that just gives these movies its own layer of complexity, tension, and distinction. Smile's psychological depth, combined with its use of disturbing imagery and slow building tension, makes Smile a powerful exploration of fear, mental illness, and the horror of unresolved emotional wounds. And Sosie Bacon's emotionally charged performance anchors the film, making the viewer deeply invested in Rose's tragic story. Meanwhile, Parker Finn's atmospheric direction and focus on psychological horror elevates Smile from a simple creature feature to a thoughtful exploration of trauma. Together, Bacon's meaningful portrayal and Finn's detailed filmmaking create a movie that is as emotionally heavy as it is terrifying. And I also have to say, Kyle Gallner's in this movie, so why not check it out? That's a big plus right there.
My pussy's gone crazy!
Overall, I give Smile a B+. So next I'm moving on to Smile 2. I will say this will be spoiler free, so if you're worried about that, and for the next movie that came out that I got to see early, just letting y'all know these next two movies will be spoiler free since they're newer. But in Smile 2, the story picks up 6 days after the events of the first film with a new protagonist, Sky Riley, a troubled pop star played by Naomi Scott. After a traumatic car accident that killed her boyfriend Paul and left her badly injured, Sky is left struggling with physical pain, addiction, and guilt. Sky's life takes a darker turn when she reconnects with an old friend, Lewis, who transfers the smile curse to her in a violent and brutal manner. The infamous smile entity continues to haunt and torment its victims, with Sky being its new one. And this movie really explores the themes of trauma, guilt, and addiction, while diving deeper into the smile entity's unsettling nature. Sky's struggle in this sequel pretty much mirrors that of Rose from the first movie, continuing the theme of facing inner demons that are as dangerous as the supernatural ones. And the first thing I have to talk about is man. I haven't seen Naomi Scott in a role since 2017 Power Rangers, and then before that it was Lemonade Mouth. She is a crucial element to this movie, let me tell you. She just drives the emotional core of this whole movie, and this might be her best performance to date. But like I said, I've only seen her in 2 other things, so Naomi just brings a deep emotional intensity to Sky Riley. A pop star with intense guilt and a past addiction, her portrayal is layered with vulnerability and pure rawness, and she just fully embodies Sky's fractured psyche. Transitioning from moments of fragile self-doubt to an intense, desperate will to survive. Throughout the movie, Naomi Scott carries the internal battle between Sky's emotional trauma and the external horror of the smile entity. Her expressive acting through her body language and her physical performance just captures the weight of her guilt over her boyfriend's death, showing a woman haunted by not just these supernatural forces, but by her own choices. And the depth of her performance grounds the supernatural elements in something relatable and human as the audience witnesses her deteriorating mental state. And on top of that, the portrayal of her addiction further intensifies Sky's vulnerability. Sky's performance becomes increasingly frantic and unhinged, capturing the essence of a person being slowly consumed by forces beyond her control. These emotional beats resonate well with the themes of trauma, making her arc feel disturbing but also sympathetic. The story really does give that in-depth exploration of trauma, guilt, and addiction while maintaining the eerie psychological horror that was introduced in the first movie. This sequel both mirrors and builds upon the original themes and foundation, emphasizing how unresolved psychological pain can manifest as a supernatural force, hence the Smile entity. Smile 2 really does expand on the narrative with Sky Riley, who is already burdened by guilt and addiction before she becomes the target of the curse. This layering of trauma emphasizes that this entity preys on emotional vulnerability and personal pain, making the horror deeply psychological in nature. Sky's guilt from her past actions when going through substance abuse adds complexity to her character, and the accident is a metaphor for her spiraling life, and the demon's presence just amplifies her inner demons. The narrative of the Smile entity creating a cycle of guilt, addiction, and pain to fuel the curse shows how the curse exploits these vulnerabilities, just like with Rose in the original, where she was haunted by the trauma of her mother's death. The Smile entity is used to symbolize how unaddressed trauma can grow and overpower someone. Sky's attempts to channel her pain into her music are just not enough to fend off this curse. Just like trauma, the Smile entity is an evil that can't be outran or controlled, much like unresolved trauma. Going back to that central theme again, trauma. Sky's descent into chaos highlights how trauma can destroy not only the person, but also their relationships, career, and the public perception of them. There's this character introduced in the movie that creates this suspense as they touch upon the question of whether confronting trauma head-on can actually offer a resolution, or if some pains are just too great to conquer, and the uncertainty revolving around this glimmer of hope adds a layer of distrust, mirroring the sense of helplessness found in the battle with trauma. And I really do feel like Smile 2 just does a better job at mixing and balancing the supernatural horror with real-world psychological struggles, as the story, as it kind of feels like the focus more on the story elements and like the psychological horror elements of this movie. This story points out the emotional stakes by focusing on Sky's shattered psyche and her descent into madness caused by guilt and the curse. The film also shines a light on celebrity culture, which I really found fascinating, by showing how being in the public eye can really intensify someone's trauma, which we see happen, and it turns Sky's life into a spectacle of horror. Like there's like some scenes where like she's meeting fans and you can see like her get overwhelmed and like overstimulated. And I am so glad Parker Finn returned to direct this sequel, as like I said before, his stylistic choices make me feel a part of the movie. Like, I don't know how he does it. In this movie, with his direction, he's placing the viewer in the same disoriented, paranoid state as Sky, and I found myself second guessing whether something was actually real or another mind trick that Sky's mind conjured up. Kind of like what I said about Rose in the first time. I'm like, is this actually happening, or is this just like Sky or Rose going crazy? Like, I really love that about these movies. Employing techniques like distorted camera angles, confusing sound design, and moments of stillness that elevate the tension. Parker Finn just maintains that slow burn approach to horror, which makes for more satisfying jump scares rather than the cheap ones that we get in generic horror movies. Using the atmospheric build up to his advantage to really make the viewer feel that tension and fear. This also aligns with Finn's focus to make the supernatural horror secondary to the emotional and psychological journey of Sky, and enhances that feeling of the entity just being a reflection of her inability to cope with her trauma. This use of horror drives the narrative on two levels of being a traditional horror story and also a deep psychological exploration. And I feel like when they focus more on the deep psychological exploration of these movies and like those themes of trauma, doing like a character exploration of these protagonists, I feel like that really helps a lot with the horror elements that they throw in as well. The scenes that show Sky performing and interacting with fans provide a contrast to her hallucinations and interactions with the smile entity, ensuring the audience never feels safe as Finn uses his critique to blur the lines between reality and nightmare, and his dedication to building a cohesive, atmospheric horror experience that ensures the movie remains emotionally deep and terrifying all throughout. That's another thing. It's like, you don't get a moment to just breathe in these movies. It's like, okay, so this jump scare happened, so they're building this up, there's that jump scare, it's paid off, but then it just keeps going. It never just stops and it develops a story and does that at the same time, which I find really fascinating and is really amazing. Overall, Smile 2 reinforces the idea that trauma left unchecked becomes a self-destructive force, and its terrifying manifestation as the Smile entity symbolizes that cycle of torment. Through Sky's unraveling, the movie shows how some emotional scars may never fully heal, no matter how much one tries to escape or suppress them. Naomi Scott's portrayal of Sky Riley brings a subtle performance that elevates the film's emotional stakes, while Parker Finn's direction crafts an atmospheric psychological horror experience that exploits the depths of trauma and fear. Together, they create a sequel that both builds upon and deepens the horror established in the original. And I give Smile 2 an A-. And moving on to the fifth and the best movie of this week, y'all need to go check this movie out if it's in a theater near you, and that is Your Monster, starring Melissa Barrera and Tommy Dewey. Your Monster, starring Melissa Barrera and Tommy Dewey, is a romantic horror comedy that spins a quirky modern take on Beauty and the Beast. The story follows Laura Franco, a soft-spoken actress recovering from surgery and a recent breakup. After retreating to her childhood home to recover, Laura discovers a monster living in her closet. This unlikely creature, played by Tommy Dewey, becomes a surprising source of connection and helps her reclaim her sense of purpose and confidence. This isn't technically a horror movie, it just has horror elements to it, I would like to say, but I'm talking about it because anything with horror elements in it, I will talk about as well. And I was able to actually see this movie early because I went to Regal's Monday Mystery hoping that it would be Your Monster, because if it wasn't Your Monster, I would have taken an Uber an hour away just to see this movie because of how much this was my most anticipated movie of this year. I'm so glad it's here now and I was able to see it. And then after the previews, like, I'm watching the previews and it's showing the other two vertical movies, the Elevated movie with Anthony Mackie and then the other one, and they didn't play Your Monster. I'm like, okay, I know it's Your Monster. And then they show the vertical logo. I kid you not, I almost screamed. I was like, yes, Like, I've been waiting so long for this movie. The movie is directed by Caroline Lindy, and as her feature debut, she navigates the tricky balance between fantasy, romance, and dark humor. Lindy's direction brings out the whimsy in the narrative, using visual cues and character interactions to create a world where the absurdity of a monster in the closet feels surprisingly natural and grounded. Her strength really lies in her ability to frame the monster as a metaphor for Laura's inner struggles and the anger she needs to embrace. She also expands the depth of the premise by integrating elements of self-empowering and feminist commentary. The direction really does lean into the fantastical aspects, making the movie more playful than dark, which is both a strength but also a downside, as I do wish they did lean a bit more into the serious tones, as they were felt but for the most part were executed in a playful and comedic tone. But besides that small nitpick, her focus on feminist themes, particularly Laura's journey to reclaim her voice, provides the movie with emotional weight and substance. Caroline Lindy's vision really does highlight the importance of self-love and empowerment. And I think those are like the two biggest messages in this movie. And now that that's out of the way, I need to talk about Melissa Barretta's performance, because she is the complete standout as she proves herself in this movie. She proves her range, she proves her depth, she proves her versatility as an actress in this one role alone. Melissa Barrera takes on the role of Laura Franco with a compelling blend of both vulnerability and strength. In the beginning, she portrays Laura as soft-spoken and emotionally drained while on bed rest, navigating the aftermath of a breakup and a stalled career. And her subtle performance captures the emotional fragility of a woman trying to regain her footing after several life setbacks. But as the movie progresses, Melissa inspires Laura with increasing confidence and resilience, making her character arc believable, inspiring, and also relatable and personal. Her incredible talent to carry emotional depth and lighthearted comedic timing is truly the heart and soul of the movie, and she truly elevates the story to incredible heights. Like, it's still insane to me how the world is sleeping on such a talented actress alone, and how aspiring she truly is as a person. Melissa also adds emotional depth with her voice, as she has a few musical numbers and she has such an amazing voice. I think I had trouble breathing for a moment because of how blown away I was by how incredible of a singer she really is. She delivers on the whimsical and musical elements while also elevating the fantastical tone. Aside from Lindy's directing, Melissa's performance helps ground the movie and gives the character of Laura the depth needed to drive the story forward. And then we have Tommy Dewey's performance as the monster, and he adds a unique twist to the traditional beast archetype. He brings a blend of humor and charm to the role, making the monster more of a quirky, comedic figure than a menacing presence. His performance really subverts the expectations of what a monster should be. The monster, with his endearing personality and unexpected romantic potential, offers an unusual love interest for Laura. Dewey's ability to balance the comedic aspects of the character with the moments of sincerity and warm emotions feeds into the movie's tone, which I think Dewey really helped balance out the lighthearted and serious mood shifts in the movie. Even though I felt like it could have been executed better, he really did help balancing out those tones. The movie is marketed as a horror, and the movie does have some dark themes. It has hints towards horror elements, but Dewey's energetic comedic interpretation makes the monster more lovable than fearsome. Like, there's a moment in the movie where you feel sympathy for him, and I thought that was one of the strongest moments of this movie. One of the central themes in Your Monster is the idea of personal transformation and empowerment. Laura starts off as someone unsure of herself and her direction in life, but through her interactions with the monster, she's able to find her voice figuratively and literally. This inner transformation parallels the Beauty and the Beast dynamic, and is just not a physical creature, but a metaphor for the parts of herself that she needs to confront, accept, and embrace, which I believe we all can relate to. And it's been a few days. I saw this Monday, and it's now, I just can't stop thinking about how much I can relate to this movie and relate to Laura Franco and like the messaging of this movie. Like, it's really resonating with me, and it really has sat with me throughout these past five days. Wait, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah, 5 days. The monster gives Laura that push she needs to connect with her inner rage, scream out her frustrations, and stand up against the people who have wronged her. The movie also explores the contrast between the normal and unusual, as Laura's ex, Jacob, represents the classic prince figure who fails to appreciate her, while the monster, who is at first glance frightening and unsettling, proves to be more sincere, loving, and supporting than Laura's ex. This subversion of traditional romantic tropes adds complexity to this love triangle. The movie suggests that true love and self-empowerment may lie in the surprising and unusual rather than the classic expectations of romance. There's also this feminist undertone that is the key to the story and messaging, as it champions self-reliance and resilience, especially for women who have been sidelined or diminished by others. Overall, Melissa Barrera's emotional depth and Dewey's comedic charm are central to the film's appeal. Your Monster offers a layered exploration of personal growth, unconventional love, and the power of self-expression, while playing with well-known fairy tale patterns. The movie represents a fresh take on classic fairy tale tropes, offering a quirky, heartwarming story of personal growth and unconventional love. And I give this movie a 10 out of 10. With that in mind, go out and see this movie right now. It came out October 25th. Catch it in a theater near you. I think there's a limited release right now, so hopefully if enough people go and see it, they can do a re-release with a wider scale, kind of like what Longlegs just did. So please go out and support this movie with Melissa Barrera and Tommy Dewey. And I'll have a link down to Fandango down below, so you can go and get tickets to this movie for yourself and see where the nearest showing is to your location. So yeah, I will have that link down below. But yeah, that's this week's Little Wheel of Horrors. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, please drop a like, subscribe if you are new and you find yourself coming back to my videos on the regular, and join the Grimpire, and turn post notifications on to get notified when I do post again. And let me know what you thought about these movies down below. Did you like them? Did you not like them? I would really like to hear your thoughts down below. And let me know some feedback. Let me know if you're enjoying these videos. If you're not, let me know what I can work on, what I should change, like anything like that. Just let me know down below in the comments. Just please be respectful. And all my socials will be down in the description below. I'll have my Twitter, my Instagram, my Snapchat, my TikTok. All those will be down in the description. I also have links down below to where you can rent these movies or check them out. But yeah, I hope you did enjoy this video. And so yeah, if you're interested in any of these movies, Night Teeth, Truth or Dare, Smile 1, check out these movies right now. Check out Smile 2 and Your Monster in theaters right now.